the year of our Lord 2024. This is Holy Thursday. For those of you who are Christian and you celebrate or remember Holy Thursday, that's the time that in the scriptures is the day that Jesus was in the upper room and he washed the feet of his disciples. I'm pausing because I think I'm confusing something here, but um, this is Holy Thursday. We used to wash the feet of people. People wash the feet of other people on Holy Thursday. I'm trying to remember some stuff, and for some reason I'm drawing a blank. But it's a good day. It's a day for humility. It's a day for thought. It's a day for reflection. To think about what this whole holy season for Christians is all about. It's a day to maybe pause and think about the things that Jesus taught and ask ourselves, are we doing those things? Are we doing what Jesus taught? Or are we signos Christian in name only, claiming to be a Christian when we ignore what Jesus says, because what Jesus says to do is uncomfortable and many times it's unpleasant. And so we, grab the title Christian and we attach it to ourselves, but we don't really do Christianity. So for me at least, it's a day of pondering and thinking. And I was talking about the washing of feet because I have done that so many times. And uh, to to do that, we've had some comical moments. When I washed the feet, we used to wash the feet just of the deacons in my church, and it's so funny when people would want to grease up their feet, put some lotion on them bad boys, wash them, get all the ash off because they were going to have the foot washing thing. It was always cracking me up because, we started off with a clean basin of water. The water was not filmy, but by the second person, the film was there. And I remember that and I chuckled. But it also reminds me of how immersed in the opinions and the thoughts processes of the people in the world. I don't care what your feet look like. When you're washing somebody's feet, you don't care about what they look like, but we care about what their feet look like. And we miss sometimes, I think, the beauty and the power of certain moments. I woke up this morning with Ntozake Shange on my mind. Because she has a poem in her play, When Colored Girls Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. And I like all of the things that she wrote in that, but there's a particular one that I'm going to read a part of this morning because I need for us to understand that being Christian means embracing who God made us and not being ashamed and not being afraid and not cowering when people or systems come against us. I need for us to embrace ourselves and ask God, who am I and what have you put me on this world for? What have you, because, we've gotten a gift. All of us have a gift. And many of us don't use them because we think we're unworthy, or maybe that's not really a gift, or we want somebody else's gift. There's so many reasons why we don't do what we were put here to do. And it ought to bother you. It ought to bother you. You ought to be willing and anxious and excited about giving your gift back to God, back to God. And by when you do that, you're giving it to people who would benefit from the gift that God gave you. I think that God was a strategic creator, and God strategically knew what God wanted in this world, and so He created all of us um, to do those things, and for us not to embrace or even to know what gift that we have is almost like an affront to the God who created us on purpose. God created us on purpose. But then once you know who you are, or once you get an inkling of who you are, it becomes incumbent on you to embrace it and nurture it and grow it. Why am I talking about this? Because for myself, I've hidden my gifts for a long time for a number of reasons. That's not what we're going to do this morning. But I hid them. I hid them. And I've been thinking about that. And I've been thinking about how easily I was impacted by some of the things that happened to me in my life when I was growing up. And so, just, when your sense of self is squashed and you don't really know who you are, or you don't appreciate who you are, you can get in a place where you don't use your gifts. Now, I've used some of them. But if I were to pass this work, if I were to make transition tomorrow, I would know that I'm making transition without having done all that God created me to do. So we let things take us. We let things take who we are. We let things and people and systems bother us and upset our spiritual equilibrium. And we don't do what we're supposed to do. We don't launch out into the deep. We don't walk in faith, on faith, around faith. And it's to the detriment of God's world. And in this particular political time, when so many people are trying to debase us, debase blacks, debase women, debase immigrants. I mean, even with the horrific tragedy that happened in Baltimore yesterday, people are going back to the DEI thing and saying that people are because immigrants are working on the bridge. Um, they're saying that DEI really stands for didn't earn it. And I could get into a whole thing about that. DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. People are saying it means DE, it means didn't earn it. And so we have these immigrants who are doing these jobs. You're not going to do them. You would not do those jobs. And those guys and immigrants and black people and brown people and women have worked to make this country what it is. Talking about make America great again. So we are always fighting to see ourselves, to learn ourselves, to embrace ourselves, and then to hold on to ourselves. And so maybe that's why I woke up this morning with this part of Ntozake Shange's poem, Somebody Almost Ran Off with All of My Stuff. Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff, not my poems or dance I gave up in the street, but somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff, like a kleptomaniac, working hard and forgetting while stealing. This is mine. This ain't your stuff. Now, why don't you put me back and let me hang out in my own self? Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff and didn't care enough to send a note home saying, quote, I was late for my solo conversation or 2 sizes too small for my own tacky skirts. What can anybody do with something of no value on an open market? Did you get a dime for my things? Hey, man, where you going with all my stuff? This is a woman's trip, and I need my stuff to ooh and ah about. Daddy, I got a mainline number from my own stuff. That's not what she wrote, but now won't you put me back and let me play this duet with this silver ring in my nose? Honest to God, somebody almost ran off with all of my stuff. And I'm not going to read the entire poem because you know her language is kind of dicey, and I don't want to do that in this venue on this platform. But the idea that we let people, bad relationships, systems, bad people in those systems, all those things, take our stuff, take our gifts, take our voice, quiet us down, push us in the corner. That should be troubling. So what I'm thinking about on this Holy Thursday, Jesus, loved and humbled himself so much that he washed the feet of his disciples. And he did it because he wanted them to know that they matter. And metaphorically, right now on today, Jesus is washing our feet and trying to tell us that we matter and that God is wanting us to give to God and to this world what God gave us. We need to do that. And so we do that. We can drown out all of the noise that's trying to tell us, as blacks, as women, as Native Americans, indigenous people, and I'm sorry, as members of the LGBTQIA community, all of these people who call themselves Christian, who are trying to tell us that we do not matter, that we are not genuinely Christian, we're not genuine even human beings. We need to cut that down. Just drop it. Just cut it off at the pass and say to the systems, to the people, whomever, you're not going to get me. You are not going to take my intellect, my joy, my faith, my power, or my gifts. I'm not going to let you walk off with all of my stuff. I'm not going to do it. And we have to say that to the forces of racism and sexism and homophobia and Islamophobia and all of these things that a certain group of people are just trying to push back 50 years. And we have to say, we're not going back. You're not going to take my stuff. I'm not going to let you. So now what else? What's the next move? Because that you're trying to do is not going to happen. So anyway, I was just thinking about it. I was sad about the thing that happened in Baltimore, that bridge collapsing. I've driven over that bridge hundreds of times. And the fact that immediately people on the other side started making racist statements about it. I just thought, would y'all get a life? Would y'all talk about the issues? Would you stop feeding into the fear and the hatred that so many of your believers, so many of your base have? Would you quit it? Would you get a life? Quit it, quit it, quit it. People died doing work so that your families could drive across that bridge. No, they can't. And you have the audacity to talk about DEI and the immigrants and all of that. Stop it. Just stop it. And for us, I say, let's stop letting people take all of our stuff. Learn our history, tell our history, write it as frontlets on the foreheads, between the eyes of our children, as the Bible says, both in the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament. Combat, challenge the Moms for Liberty and all those who are trying to, as they did before, because the Daughters of the Confederacy or whatever they called, had a campaign where they vowed to teach children the principles of white supremacy. So, okay, that's cool. You can do that. This is a free country. At least now it is. We need to form up, just form up and have classes and stuff where we teach our children our history. And maybe that means some of us have to learn our history as well, because we have to give, as Dr. Greg Carr says, we have to have and function in the movement of memory. And we have to remember and then pass those memories on to our children so that they will know who they are and will be less inclined to let anybody or anything take all of their stuff. It's my rant for the morning. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I just have to share stuff with you when I'm in those places, and this gives me the opportunity to do it. So this morning's meditation is not from the actual book. Those of you who have been with us know that I read from my book, Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul, and it has about 90 meditations in it. But I write a meditation every single week, and shout out to those who are emailing me and wanting to be put on that distribution list, because every Tuesday I write a meditation and send it out. And when I get your emails, I put your email addresses on that list immediately. So shout out and thank you for those who are doing that. But I wrote this one this week based on some of the stuff that happened this week, and it's called Calling on God in Times of War and Confusion. And it reads, let's be honest. There are times when we don't want to and won't call on God. We believe there should be reward points for our being in relationship with God, which means for most people that, being in a relationship means that they go to church and they try to live by the laws of God and Jesus by tending to the needs of the least of these and read the Bible. It's kind of basic. But a God relationship is not that easy. It's not easy. It is constantly challenged by the events of life. Howard Thurman wrote, quote, "It is natural to have a plan for one's life. The mind is always trying to make sense out of experience," end quote. And that's found in his book called The Inward Journey. But we often fail when we try to do that, because in our human minds, some things do not make sense, nor will they ever. On this Tuesday of Holy Week 2024, we are wrestling. It was on Tuesday. And so in this Holy Week of 2024, some of us at least are wrestling with a renewed reminder that justice is not fairly dispensed. The former president, who was found guilty of real estate fraud by manipulating his net worth, was ordered to secure a bond for the full amount of $464 million to the state of New York by Monday. If the amount was not paid, the state of New York would begin to seize his properties. He was having trouble getting the money because he didn't have no money, and he began to waver between boasting and whining. The former president, who boasts of his wealth, spoke out of both sides of his mouth, one side saying he did not have enough money to pay what he owed, and the other side claiming that he had over $500 million in the bank. People and companies were not coming to his rescue. And I was kind of rejoicing. That's on my own. That's not in there, but I was just kind of, because he needs to pay for what he's done. They were not coming to his rescue, and it looked like he would have his day of judgment. It didn't happen. He did not. He had a day where he celebrated his strategy of delay when it comes to decisions made against him. The law usually does not care about whether or not one can meet the obligations set by the court. Normally, for normal people, for most of us, for all of us, if one cannot pay, one suffers consequences, including sometimes being thrown into jail. But that was not the case for this former president. He appealed the deadline for having to secure the bond and he won. And then he was given 10 extra days to pay not the full amount, but just over $1 million of the full amount. 464 million down to $1 million. Y'all hear that? I was livid when I heard that. Um, and while he continues to appeal the amount, people were and are angry. People are trying to make sense out of what we are witnessing. No other person will be granted such leeway, such leniency, and everybody knows it. People who have done far less serious crimes are in jail. But this man, who has over 90 indictments that have been charged against him, continues to work the justice system while whining that he is the victim, when in fact, what we are seeing is what extreme privilege looks like. We are, as Thurman says, we are trying to make sense out of experience, but we are, some of us at least, are having a hard time. This nation is weighted down by a growing sense of hopelessness. People are tired, and some of them are depressed. Some people are needing to go to counselors, as therapists, because it's just too much. Even though, as Thurman notes, war and affliction are part of the life process, it boggles the mind to feel that some of us, as individuals, and as members of the underclasses of society, so often end up being hounded and harassed by a system that is run by those who know how to work it for their own benefit, and at the same time work so that the least of these too often are left flailing in the deep waters of injustice. It makes no sense. Experiences too often do not make sense and they're not fair. Those inclined to do so cry out for God, the one who, quote, hears our faintest cry and answers by and by, end quote. But many say nothing. Yet, 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 when another injustice slaps us in the face and makes a mockery out of the cries for justice that continually come from those who have seldom gotten it, some turn their anger and their frustration into themselves, inside of themselves, where it festers. And it can become, and often does become, rage or frustration or both. These bottled up emotions morph into depression and or mental malaise. I think God says, don't do it. Don't give up. Hold on to your stuff. Don't do it. Don't give up and don't give in. Don't give your hope away. Don't give your faith away. Don't give your fight away. Don't do it. Sometimes when we hear that, we shrug and display a whatever attitude. And God sees it and God feels it. Yet God says again, don't do it. There's more to you than this world is telling you. There's more to you. I put more in you. Don't do it. And it is at these times when having ears that hear might actually save us from giving in to hopelessness and frustration and depression. We can hear God saying, almost in a whisper, one more time, don't do it. In our disgust and spiritual fatigue, we might ask God, why not? Why? We are tired, we are weak, and we are worn, as it says in the song, Precious Lord. And God answers, I know, but hold on. Some of us do manage to hold on and thus experience yet another time when God does not fix a bad situation, but gives us enough strength to get through it, over it, and in a position to challenge it. Our refusal to give in to our frustration is an act of resistance. Come on, y'all. Just like Jochebed, the mother of Moses, resisted when she decided to get pregnant despite the royal order saying that all Hebrew boys should be killed at birth. It was an act of resistance. She said to herself, and she said to those people around her, he's not going to tell me. He's not going to scare me into not having a baby. I believe in God. I believe in God, and I believe God will hear my faintest cry and answer by and by. She had that baby. We call him Moses. In times of frustration, anger, confusion, and spiritual pain, times when too often we cannot see or hear God, and sometimes we don't want to, we are called to remember that life is a process of war and affliction, and that God is with us at break of day. Always, always. We may not be able to see thank you out loud sometimes. Sometimes stuff is so bad you just can't even get the words out. But hopefully we can at least mutter it and thus connect ourselves to God, who will give us the strength to fight injustice one more time and to go through the process of spiritual frustration so that we can put ourselves in position to eventually challenge the circumstance or circumstances that have caused us and so many others so much pain. It is what God's people have always had to do, and unfortunately will continue to have to do, because injustice and evil and racism, sexism, all, it's not going away. That stuff is in people. It's just in them. Um, in spite of that, which is not going to go away, what is also not going away is God. There is still God, and we have to call on her. Jesus had to remember that in his last week of life. And we have to remember it now, as every day it seems one more step up a steep hill that wants to leave justice for all to its demise. We say no. We say no. You're not going to do that. You're not going to take all of my stuff, my faith, my hope, my memories. You're not going to take the memories of all the people who worked and died so that all of us could be where we are today. No, we're not doing it. We need that. That's a spirit of resistance. Amen and amen. So I hope that meditation resonates with you. And I hope that you think about it. I hope that all of us, and I'm talking to myself, go into a place, into a sweet and still space where we do an inventory on how we are using what God gave us. We have the power to fight all of this crazy stuff around us. We have the power to get out of bad relationships in our homes. We have the power. I'm telling you, we have the power. We just have to claim it and then use it, and not let anybody or anything take any, let alone all of our stuff. So that would be it for today. I hope that you have a meaningful and reflective Good Friday, and that you celebrate on Resurrection Sunday as you might. But understand this: that resurrection is for all of us. All of us. We do it constantly. Resurrect you. We are suffered. We're put down. We're knocked down, and we get up. We get up. Resurrection done by Jesus the Christ is also what we're supposed to do. God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.